So, like I mentioned in that Switch 2 Impressions video the other day, one of the things that was most striking to me was just how much they've improved the eShop experience on the Switch 2, because it is way snappier and much more pleasing to navigate than it was before on the original Switch. And in turn, because anytime you get new gaming hardware, of course you're going to want to snatch up some new gaming software to enjoy on it, I decided I would go ahead and grab some new games through the eShop and really start to flesh out my digital collection on the Switch 2. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, are just some of the games that I grabbed out of sheer excitement for the new Switch 2 hardware. Some of these are actual Switch 2 games, some are games that got upgrades to the Switch 2 version, and others are just older Switch 1 titles that I either already enjoyed and knew would be a great time and just wanted to check them out on the Switch 2 screen, or other titles were just ones that I had not explored yet, but I've been heavily recommended to do so. But yeah, before I get too far ahead of myself, let's go ahead and kick this off with a actual Switch 2 launch title that was digital only, and that would be Fast Fusion. And much like Fast RMX was a launch title for the original Switch, now with the Switch 2's launch we have Fast Fusion. And again, I'll be honest, I was not a huge fan of the original Fast RMX. There were just something about the track designs and some limited visibility that kind of put me off of that game, but just about everything that I complained about in the original is something that I have not had an issue with here in its sequel. And this might be a little bit cliche to say, but it really does feel like a, well, appropriately, fusion of F-Zero and Wipeout. And let's just get this out of the way, it is fundamentally a fun racing game mechanically speaking, between boosting, making massive jumps to shortcuts on each course, or just ramming your opponents to get the upper hand. Not to mention it does have a polarity mechanic, where swapping from red to blue to tune your vehicle to the correspondingly colored boost pad adds an extra layer of strategy. Kinda like Ikaruga if you've ever played that game. But when you're not racing, you also get to blow the currency you've collected on track and by winning races to unlock new vehicles and courses, making those in-between sections pretty fun as well. And as you unlock new vehicles, you can fuse them together to create new rides, hence the name Fusion. And I would say it's not especially deep, but it's rewarding enough to make what otherwise might have been like a by-the-numbers futuristic arcade racer just all the better. And this is to say nothing about the fact that this is one of the only launch games on the Switch 2 that can actually run at 4K 60 FPS, making it a brilliant, approachable title to show off your Switch 2's capabilities to friends who might want to learn more about it, and it's just a total steal at 15 bucks. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that you not sleep on this one because it is just straight up good arcadey fun that is visually stunning to boot. And next up, because it was on sale and I already knew this was a wonderful game, I did go ahead and buy a copy of Batman Arkham City. And this one was kind of a weird choice, admittedly, because I was pretty lukewarm when the trilogy first came to the Switch, and that's because, by all accounts, Arkham Asylum ran pretty good on the Switch, Arkham City weirdly ran even better, and by most accounts, Arkham Knight ran the absolute worst with horrendous performance dips to the point where it was pretty much unplayable. Not to mention I'm just not a huge fan of physical releases that have that partial download functionality, although I am begrudgingly accepting it for game keycards. Here I thought I would just get Arkham City since that's probably my favorite of the three, just to see how it performs on the Switch 2. And honestly, I don't think I should have been surprised to see that it runs perfectly fine. And while I don't think it runs demonstrably better necessarily than maybe the original Switch or the Steam Deck, it's still a game that I don't mind having digitally available at the ready at any point because it's just a really fun game to dive into. Also, beyond just the raw merits of the base game of Batman Arkham City, I didn't even realize there was a DLC expansion called Harley's Revenge, and I definitely haven't played it, and I don't think I've played through the Catwoman DLC either now that I think about it. Although now that I think about it, I don't know if that was a DLC or just an unlockable after the main game, but either way, I haven't played them, so this will be an exciting way for me to revisit those. Or, I guess, visit them for the first time. Kinda like how I didn't mind revisiting Cyberpunk 2077 because I still haven't played the Phantom Liberty expansion there. But honestly, even without any new content to explore in this game and just talking about the base game from 2011, it still holds up tremendously well. I mean, sure, the visuals are a little bit dated at this point, considering it is almost 15 years old now, but let's be honest, the Arkham trilogy walked so that Insomniac Spider-Man could run, and those fundamentals are still as sound now as they were back in 2011. And speaking of fundamentals, or really just fun also from 2011, I also snatched up Bulletstorm, the Duke of Switch edition, for I think $2.99 on sale. And no, this isn't quite as polished as something like Arkham City would have been back in the day, but it is still a stylish, over-the-top, just completely ridiculous first-person shooter, and I really didn't have any first-person shooters to play right at launch, unless you consider Cyberpunk 2077 a first-person shooter, which, yeah, it is, but it's more of an RPG first-person shooter, so not really the same arcadey first-person shooting action that you would get from something like Bulletstorm. Not to mention, beyond the raw, fun, well-implemented, just standard first-person shooting mechanics, you also have the Unleash ability, or the ability to kick your foes, which is just deliriously fun every time you pull it off, and it's just a fun, schlocky, over-the-top story. Made all the more so with the Duke Nukem edition, which this is the first time I've actually tried playing as Duke Nukem for the Bulletstorm campaign, and I wasn't sure how they were going to work that in, but the way they did it is absolutely hilarious. They literally just plugged Duke Nukem in place of Grayson, and the whole rest of the story appears to play out in exactly the same way as if it was Grayson, but it's not Grayson, you're playing as Duke Nukem. And Duke, with all of his hilarious one-liners and quips, those are still intact of course, but then he sort of responds in a very confused way to all these people calling him Grayson or how the story beats play out, and it all ends up feeling like an episode of Mystery Science Theater almost, just because it's a completely nonsensical premise, and yet somehow it totally works because the game's just so over the top anyways. Now, unfortunately, I would say this game does not run as well as it does on the Steam Deck. On the Steam Deck, I'm pretty sure I was at a pretty solid 60 FPS over there when I tested, I think last year or the year before. But because the console versions were capped, I believe, at 30 frames per second, I feel like that's exactly the performance that we're getting here, or at least it certainly did not look very smooth when I played it. Not unplayable, just not at the smoothest possible frame rate. But still, as a silly, over-the-top action romp, I have no problem having this in my library, especially at a budget price, so yeah, I would say if you can find it for just a couple of bucks on sale like I did, then it might be worth adding to your library, but yeah, if you want the best performance ever, probably going to want to look elsewhere. And to be clear, I don't think that's a failure of the Switch 2 hardware, I just don't know if maybe an update or something would be needed to smooth this thing out, but yeah, ultimately, probably not the best game that I bought for the Switch so far, but I don't mind it necessarily either. But next up, let's get a little bit less action-heavy and a little bit more fantastical with Hogwarts Legacy. Now, I'd mentioned a few weeks back in a community post that if you bought this prior, they had this game on sale for like 17 bucks for the base version, and then the upgrade to the Switch 2 version was only $10. And having already played through and beaten this on the PlayStation 5, making decent progress also on the Steam Deck playing the PC version, I figured why not roll the dice a third time, if for no other reason than just to check out the sheer novelty of seeing how it plays on the Nintendo Switch 2. And I would say my experience so far has been a little bit mixed with this one, not as strong as what I've gotten out of Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, it looks good when you're in docked mode, but it definitely looks better and plays smoother when you're playing it in portable mode, and I think that has something to do with them aiming for a 40 FPS target whenever you're playing in handheld. Although I will say that so far it does look better to me than it did on the Steam Deck, and it certainly seems to be smoother when I'm playing it in handheld. And I'm sure there are some people out there who could tweak the settings on the PC version to get it running even better than what we're getting from the Switch 2 right now. But for me, the primary draw of playing it on some place like the Switch 2 is that I don't have to spend a lot of time doing like optimizations or tinkering to get it to work that well. Generally speaking, it just does. And while it's not the best version of this game that's out there, I would put it pretty close in terms of quality, probably to the Series S version, I would say. And just like Arkham City, this is another game I definitely don't mind having a digital copy of, just so I can have it at the ready whenever I want, since it's such a massive and beautiful world to explore, and again, for the Switch 2, which is so focused on being a handheld and being able to go with you on the go, it just seemed like a natural fit and one that I was happy to add to my library. And finally, this last game is not one that is a Switch 2 title, but I'm curious to test its performance and see if it plays better now on the Switch 2 hardware than on the original Switch, where I think it was a little bit dicey. It's a game I've never played before, but it comes highly recommended to me by my friend Bria from GameStop, and that would be The Outer Wilds. And the truth is, I haven't had a chance to play this at all yet. I'm going to try to go in as blind as humanly possible. The only thing I really know about this is that it has something to do with space, and I think there's some sort of a time loop component, so this may have some Majora's Mask-esque sort of function to it. I'm not 100% on that, but it is an Annapurna Interactive release, and historically speaking, I've been a huge fan of the games that they release that are narrative driven. Plus, given the portable nature of the Switch 2 and the fact that this does appear like it's going to be sort of a cozy game, or more like curling up with a good book necessarily than playing some balls to the wall action game, I think it'll be fun to explore it on this hardware, and again, with the added bonus of figuring out if it does in fact run better here without a patch, and if so, I'm sure this story will play out in some gorgeous way on the brilliant new screen that the Switch 2 is sporting. So yeah, ultimately one that I can't speak to at any great degree since it is a brand new game that I'm playing for the first time and all, but I'm hoping for the best, and Bria, if you're watching, thank you again for the recommendation, and I will definitely keep you posted on what I think about it. And there are still games that I'm looking at on the eShop, mostly because that, excitement from the new hardware is definitely compelling me to explore other games I might not have played, and another one that I've been looking at is actually Konutsugami, which looks really interesting visually, and I like the idea that Capcom sort of took a chance and put out a game that is kind of different from their standard AAA fare. But I kind of want to learn more about that game before I commit. I just thought it would be neat because it does support the mouse mode functionality, which is something I would like to try out in a few different games if I'm able. So yeah, long story short, I expect I will be buying a lot of games from the eShop as time goes on, but for now those are just some of the ones that I'm most excited for outside of maybe Kunutsugami, which I'm still on the fence about, but hey, we'll see what happens. What about you though? Are there any particular games that you've purchased on the eShop lately or anything that you would recommend? If so, please let me know in the comments below. As far as what's coming up on the channel, I will be doing a video talking about some of the third-party games I hope come to the Switch after one of you recommended it, and then also I'm still polishing up a video about the games I would gladly buy twice or perhaps a third time on the Switch too, kind of like some of the ones I did today, I guess, so stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for your time and hanging out here on the channel with me. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next one.